All right, Zig coming in on the top 10 of the show. We have Ted Bowne of the band Passafire. Ted is a singer-songwriter, producer, engineer, all-around do-it-all musician, as well as a very cool down-to-earth guy. Ted and Passafire are playing at the Grog Shop October 19th. That's a Thursday, October 19th. My band Sea Level, letter C dash level. We are a high-energy funk-punk reggae rock group that takes 12-string acoustic instruments and runs them through Marshall amplifiers. We are opening with our friend Mellow Man Funk. It's going to be a banger of a night. So, October 19th, the Grog Shop is where you want to be if you're in Cleveland, Ohio. Passafire also has a new record coming out. As of right now, there are 4 singles available on all streaming platforms, with the newest one being Ocean Floor. Check out Ocean Floor and the other 4 singles wherever you get your music. This was a really fun conversation. It was yet another return to the Zig at the Gig format, where I recorded in my van during the process of going from one gig to the next. And Ted, he was just getting off the road and was walking his dog during this conversation. So there's some parts that like cut out, and you at times will occasionally hear like a dog breathing and a squeak toy happening. It's pretty adorable. But Ted was awesome. This was a really insightful conversation because he's a guy that has all these different lenses of a musical career to like work at and work through, like as far as like writing, recording, and producing and playing multiple different instruments. And this was a very inspiring look through those multiple lenses. Also to mention, Ted's been working with HR from The Bad Brains on HR's new solo record, so there was a lot of cool insights with working with HR, which Coda and I from Sea Level are huge fans of. So October 19th, the Grog Shop, Passafire, be there. It's going to be epic. Tickets and stuff linked below. If you can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like Ted and sharing their insights with you. And without further ado, here's my conversation with Ted. Lake?
Keuka Lake?
Yeah.
It's Keuka Lake. It's one of the Finger Lakes in upstate New York. And it is somewhere my family's been going for about 6 generations on my dad's side. My great-grandfather built a place up there, I think in the 40s. And we've been going there a bunch, and that's kind of a meeting place for that side of our family. We haven't been in a while. We need to go again, but it's a lot of childhood memories, a lot of adult memories. I've been there for my brother's wedding, and the band's been there on days off. It's a great place.
That's awesome. And diving into like researching you and your family, and like it's so cool like how music is like through, like it's a bloodline through your family. Like, and being the youngest, like, and having a bunch of like older siblings playing and your dad playing was like, did you take to music right away, or was it something you kind of shied into?
No, it was something that I was born into for sure. My brothers, I have 3 older brothers, and my dad plays keys, my mom sings, and my brothers play bass, drums, and guitar. So there was always a jam happening when I was very little, all the way up till probably I was about 10 or 11 when we moved to Maryland. And then I started, playing instruments myself and started bands around town.
What did you start with?
I started with piano at 6. I started taking piano lessons when I was 6, and then kind of got bored with that. I don't know, I saw my brothers playing guitars and drums and stuff, and I wanted to do that stuff. So I did drums, I think in 3rd grade. I got a drum set, and it was like this really just bottom of the barrel pawn shop drum kit. I don't even remember what kind of kit it was, but it was awesome to learn on. And then in 5th grade, I got a guitar for Christmas and started taking lessons on guitar. And then in high school, it was kind of, I played guitar and drums and sang with a couple different bands that did like Battle of the Bands and talent shows and stuff like that.
That's sick. That's like, well, that's that. Now you're Dave Grohling it at that point, you know?
Yeah. I've always just been interested in all of it. And I'm still interested in piano and keys, more so now than I was when I was 6, just because I've realized the power of that instrument.
It's interesting because like it kind of comes through in different points. Like you really start to hear how that instrument can bring out certain aspects to a song when you kind of moved past the one you're working on in a way, you know?
Yeah.
And like, then it unlocks like, oh, synths are sick. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I mean, the amount of sound that you can get nowadays in like, computer programs or built into stuff, it's insane. There's so many rabbit holes you can go down.
Oh yeah. No, and like that's the beauty of any kind of creative outlet, but particularly with music, and particularly if you don't have like a home base for your like bass instrument, you can like jump on anything and really invest into whatever. That's what's so cool about like guitar, or like, because you can quickly adapt that to bass or banjo or mandolin, any of the like the fretted instruments, it's a easy skip too.
Yeah, I've been trying to learn ukulele.
Yeah.
Recently,
it's weird.
It's definitely weird because it's only 4 strings and it starts with a high string, so you got to readjust your thinking about how you play.
What kind of brought on that? Is there something with a project that you're working on that's uke based?
No, I've had this ukulele for a while, and it's kind of just sat in the case. And before we went to Hawaii, Passafire went to Hawaii for the first time earlier this year.
Yeah.
And I picked it up, and I was just like, man, I wonder if we'll have an opportunity to like do a little acoustic thing. If we do, I should learn something on ukulele. So I think I learned Feel It and a couple other Passafire songs on ukulele, just simple chord progressions.
Did you, like, I found like kind of bouncing from singing and playing to guitar to ukulele, it was kind of weird because everything's so like high up. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? It wasn't a difficult transition, but it was a strange feeling when you're singing and playing.
Yeah, I can agree with that for sure. It's not, I mean, if you're doing strumming, like the sort of traditional Hawaiian style strumming, it's a little bit easier. But if you're doing, finger picking kind of stuff and single note stuff on the ukulele, it's definitely different when you're trying to sing over it as well. A lot of coordination going on.
Maybe it's just the sound hole's like smaller, so you can't, it doesn't, you kind of sing over it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we got to play some really nice ones in Hawaii, in Maui. Yeah, there was a shop in Maui that we stopped into, and there was some really nice, very expensive ukuleles that you didn't have that problem. You could definitely hear it pretty dang well.
Yeah, it's interesting. It kind of became like a fad here. Like at one point, I remember going through high school and not knowing what a ukulele was, then not being able to unsee them anywhere. Right.
I mean, I think they're selling them at like Urban Outfitters at one point. So
yeah,
it became like the accessory to the hipster hippie at the party in college.
The coolest guy would run his uke through the amp and play it dirty and be like covering Stooges songs,
Well, Kevin Reese does that, the Reese brothers.
There you go. That's cool.
He shreds it with his shirt off.
That's amazing. So how did Passafire do in Hawaii? How was the reception?
Oh, it was great. We did 2 shows opening for Revolution, which, love those guys. They've given us so many awesome opportunities, including the first time in Hawaii. And it was just 2 shows, so it really was not all that tough. And we stayed for a couple days after, and got to see some sights. Hawaii is a beautiful place. Maui is especially beautiful, and it's a shame what's happened recently there. It's crazy that we were just there. We've all mentioned that, like, we were just there.
Yeah, that is. I had family that just did a vacation out that way, and they say it's. I don't know. You see a place like that that's so beautiful and like right by water everywhere. I don't know. The thought of fire in like in that sense is kind of like it's so dissonant in a way.
Right? You don't think that could happen in a place like that, but they also have volcanoes.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, it's true. Like, yeah, I guess it's. But I mean, maybe it's just destruction of that level is so hard to kind of comprehend, especially in a place where most people go, or it's like a targeted go-to relax, and you know what I mean. Like, to think that at that same location could be that much destruction is like such an adjacent, unstable like mindset.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's amazing that you guys had that reception though, and like it was sick, and you got to experience it, and like. I have a problem like going places and just traveling. I feel like weird if I'm not trying to do a gig or something. I don't know if that's a bad thing to have now, or like, you know what I mean? Like I need the excuse of the gig to go somewhere like before enjoying the area. But
Yeah, I don't know. I much enjoy a nice non-gig related travel situation, just because that's become the last 20 years of my life, touring and being away. So if I got to be away, at this point, I'd rather be with my wife on vacation somewhere. But, touring is a necessary part of what we do. And, I recognize that. So we do it. But I definitely look forward to the times when we can go and be outside. We don't necessarily go to a lot of shows when we're not on the road. My wife also tours. She's Slightly Stupid's merch person for the last 2 years on summer tour. Yeah, so she understands what it's like to be away for a long time. We just got back to our place in Maryland, and it's completely overgrown. So we're doing some yard work today and just taking in the isolation out here.
Is that how you guys met?
Sort of, yeah. She was working with the hip abduction when we met, and they were good friends of ours, and I was living in St. Pete where she was living. So we eventually ran into each other and started dating immediately. I'm from here in Maryland, so that we moved here before we got married, and we were able to get a lot more land here than we could have down there in Florida, so we went for it.
That's sick. Where was she? So she was like touring and doing that from the rip too. So it was kind of like, right? Or was it okay?
Yeah.
So you guys, that's because I think that's an important like to make relationships work like that. If you both kind of have the same like kind of like mentality and work output and like kind of drive towards whatever that output is, it's kind of easier to work with those like long distance and not seeing each other for a long time. You know what I mean? Like to
that it becomes the norm.
Yeah, it doesn't not suck, but
exactly. I was just gonna say that it never doesn't suck. Like you get through a week and you're like, oh, that was no problem. But then 2 or 3 weeks in, and sometimes we go. I mean, we try to never go more than 3 weeks without like flying out to see each other somewhere. But sometimes it's 4 or 5 weeks, and it's just like, oh my God, when is this gonna be over? Like it's tough, but we both have our passions and things that we want to accomplish in this life. So don't want to hold each other back from either of those things. And like it's awesome just to have a partner in life that understands what I'm doing actually, not just like, oh yeah, I understand, like understands because they do it sometimes more than I do.
Yeah, and like, because if not, like one person's somewhere else, like kind of building up resentment for not seeing the other person, or not having that thing. So that's, I think,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
it's just important to find somebody like, it's kind of rare that
Yeah,
I was able to find somebody in the industry, but like really just the key to being in a band and being in a touring position and maintaining a relationship, I think, is finding somebody that has something, like their own business or their own passions, they're artists or like, really into fitness or like whatever, something that they do that consumes as much of their time as music and touring consumes of your time. So there is that mutual understanding of this is what I do and this is what I have to do sometimes, but I love you and I'll be there.
I definitely agree that that's a super rare. It's a super rare like meeting of like the yin and yang of each other. Like that's awesome. I'm happy you guys found that.
Yeah, me
Uh,
too.
I've lucked out the same way too. My girlfriend kind of does her own thing like that, and like it makes it easier. Like she also plays in a band too, so it makes it easier.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you guys got to record?
That's
Okay, cool. Like I get it.
yeah. We have a studio here at the house. That's where we've done a lot of recording for recent Pacifier stuff. And it's, it's kind of a very normal thing for us to be rocking out on one side of the house and she's on the other side of the house watching her shows. And it's totally fine because that's what our business is.
Yeah. So that's one thing I kind of wanted to pick your brain about. So you grew up in this family of musicians, and you're kind of like you got teachers in every aspect in a way musically. But when did you get into like recording and production in that sense?
I went to Savannah College of Art and Design, um,
For film, right?
initially for film, and then through the film program, I figured out that they were offering a sound design major. Um, my I think the second quarter I was at SCAD, so within the first year they changed it, and I just changed my major right away because I saw they had a recording studio that I could just spend 4 years learning how to record in. And that seemed a lot more appealing to me. The film was daunting, still is to me. Like, I love the art form, but just, it is an art form and it's a lot. And I wasn't necessarily clicking with the film people. They all seemed to know a lot more about film than I did.
Yeah.
And I felt like I would feel more amongst people that I could relate to in the sound design department. So I switched to that. Sound design was more for film and television, not so much for recording music, but we got away with recording a lot of music and experimenting with that. And we ended up having, a lot of great experiences in college, and then after college going to studios and learning from engineers in the studios that we went to. And Will never went to college for music or for engineering. He just started learning when he joined the band and we started going to studios, and he was picking the brains of the engineers. And now he's amazing. He's working wonders in the studio. He's got his own studio in LA. So we kind of learn a lot when we just get into it and start messing around with gear and messing with different combinations, microphones, and whatever. It's really all about just doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think I definitely agree with that, and I definitely think it's like with anything, you just gotta starting. Like you gotta do something first and learn how to like from one point develop what you want to hear. It's interesting
Yeah.
too because like with sound design, like a buddy of mine made a film that we were involved with, and like seeing how they handled like from a musician standpoint, trying to be like, oh crap, how do I mix a room talking. You know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
it's a grander thing you don't think about. Like, is that whole show that we just filmed, is that whole film level? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's a whole different, but it's all very similar in that sense of dealing with different things and like their waveforms and how they fit into like a grand scheme of is this clashing, is this in phase, out of phase, but like with,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, but with completely different things, like with people talking or background noise or crickets chirping, and like it's a really interesting like because in a way like a band or something so like isolated and like easier I'd imagine than like a film.
Yeah. A film, you've got to control every aspect. Usually it's all production, post-production sound. And that was a lot of what my classes were. But, I still, out here, really, when I listen to podcasts, if it's a new podcast, a lot of times the sound design is horrible in the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah.
And then after a few episodes, they figured it out, and all of a sudden, oh, that's compression. Whoa. Like it changes over time. And some of my favorite podcasts, like I can't even listen to some of their older episodes anymore because it's so bad as far as the levels of people's microphones and stuff. So yeah, I'm still thinking with my sound designer brain, but I like to apply it to music and make, if I'm doing sound design anymore, it's just for a song, like adding sound effects to a song or making a beat with found objects, stuff like that. Like I don't necessarily mess around with the film or television, putting it to a visual. But it could be something that I start to do again later in life. I started a radio show.
Yeah.
And
What
I do
is
have
it?
sound design. It's called the Passafire Radio Hour. It's on a local station here. It also airs online every Saturday and Sunday. But there's sound design elements to that I, incorporate in the production of that just to beef it up and make it unique.
So all those skills like fall into something somewhere later for sure.
Yeah.
While in college, you guys start Pacifier, or were you writing songs before that, or was this kind of like an endeavor that came from like having an outlet like Pacifier?
Yeah, I mean, I was writing songs in high school, and when I got to college is when I met Nick Kubley, our drummer, and I just sort of played some of my rough recordings of those songs for him, and he said, let me play drums to that, and we just started messing around with those initially as originals, and we're doing a lot of covers, but we knew we needed to write some originals for recording projects and stuff. He was an illustrator, but our old keyboard player Adam and I were in sound design, so we were like, we need original stuff to record. Let's write another song. And we started writing a lot more when it became like a band instead of just me as a solo artist with a guy playing drums. But like I did bring probably 4 or 5 songs to the mix when I got to college, and these were the songs that I showed him, and he was like, yeah, I'll be in your band. And 20 years later, here we are.
And those are they eventually made it to the first Pacifier self-titled?
I don't believe any of those songs. Actually, yeah. So the song fit the description,
Okay.
which is super rare. I don't think we've played it since 2005. But that song was one of the songs that I wrote in high school that we turned into a Pacifier song. There was like maybe 4 others that didn't actually make it to the first album. They were like singles, I guess, that we were putting out like little EPs in the beginning, not putting out, but like recording them and sending them to friends. And like if we were going to play a college town nearby, we'd send a friend of ours that goes to that college like 50 little 4-song CD flyer kind of
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
And
CD business cards.
people, I'm sure people still have them stuck in their CD players because of how thick the labels we put on them were.
Yeah,
But
that's
gotta
awesome.
do what gotta do.
Right. What were you like listening to at that time when you were writing some of the initial pacifier tunes?
It was for me mostly like I love Sublime, but that was kind of around the time when Long Beach Dub All Stars was coming up in their place, and so I'd say Long Beach Dub All Stars, 311. Really listened to a lot of the Police, the Clash, and then of course Jamaican reggae, Black Uhuru, Israel Vibration. I was a really big fan of G Love and Special Sauce, and Jack Johnson. Not so much, but I listened to a lot of Jack Johnson and stuff. Dave Matthews Band, that stuff in high school.
Yeah.
And then in college, just sort of started exploring reggae and like the different styles of reggae outside of the traditional Jamaican foundational reggae, and discovered John Brown's Body my freshman year of college through a friend of Nick's, and that kind of changed everything for us. We heard an American reggae band with a rootsy sound, but there was an edge to it. There was sort of this cutting aspect that it wasn't normal. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't like chilled out. It was in your face, and great horn lines, amazing bass lines. We just, as soon as we heard that, we were like, all right, we want to be an American reggae band like this. And I know we're nothing like John Brown's Body, but it was a major inspiration in the beginning, collectively, for us to hear that and be like, oh wow, we could do music like that.
Yeah. Like so many of those are clicking for me when I was going like at that age too. Like, but that's incredible. And like it's those certain artists that totally like bring that aspiration out of you. And like,
Yeah.
though it may not be John Brown, but it's Body, but it's completely pacified. That's the side effect is you try to do something else, but you find yourself.
Yeah.
And one thing, like listening back through to the self-titled to 16 beat, like I was in that first record, I really heard a lot of as far as like vocal phrasing, like HR influence. Was HR somewhere in that for you at that time?
Yeah, I was just gonna say Bad Brains has to be lumped into that group because Lakiji is the meek. Lakiji is basically the meek goes, Ja children,
Yes.
yay. And Lakiji is Lakiji, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's so sick. Yeah.
it's complete, Sublime style ripoff of somebody that was my hero at the time, and didn't think much of it. Just like, oh yeah, this is what you do. You just write new lyrics to old stuff. And it's there. I had HR in the studio and I played him that song, and he was like, "That's cool."
Yeah?
He thought it was cool.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
it was interesting to like 20 years later be like, "Hey, what do you think of this song that we ripped off of your song?" He said it was cool. I don't know. He might not have thought it was cool, but he told me he did. So
well, he's
that's
like one
cool.
of those interesting, like super inspiring spiritual characters. So I think he was. I'm sure he was moved by it. Like, and like that was the one cool thing Sublime like inspired you to do was like straight up yoink other things and make it your own.
Yeah, because there's nothing new in music. People have been doing it, whether they're doing it consciously or subconsciously. I have one of my radio episodes. I have like songs that are blatant, blatantly ripped off of other songs, played one after the other, and you can really hear where Nirvana got that I forget what the song's called right now, but there's an older song. It's like
Come As You Are, but whatever they were referring to.
yeah, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's it's a direct rip of that line, but they made it way more famous. So
was it or like a Surfing Bird being a complete rip from Baba Mau Mau, whatever the title is for that one? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, Surfing USA was ripped off of a Chuck Berry song.
Yeah. So it's like it all comes from that, and it's how you express yourself. And I think that shouldn't be discouraging. It should be as like inspiring, because now the world, you can do whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Legally it might be different, but as far as like the creative endeavor. But so how, like, I totally put this together, like, after emailing Ryan and trying to like get in contact with you, like, how did you start working with HR?
Well, I live here in Maryland. He moved from Philadelphia down here to the Eastern Shore, I think about 3 years ago. And he moved about 25 minutes away from where I live. We have a mutual friend, James Lathos, who filmed the Finding Joseph I documentary. And James reached out to me and said, I'm sorry, we just adopted a puppy and he is excited to run around in this mode field. So he gave me HR's contact, and I reached out to him and just said, I have a studio here in case you want to record anything. I'm here. And he came and visited and thought it was cool and told me he wanted to do his next album here. And I was just through the roof. It was awesome. So he started coming over during COVID. It was like every Wednesday almost. And we just put together these 10 songs that are on this album that's coming out next month. And it sort of just happened organically. I played him songs that I just had sitting around. I have a ton of just random instrumentals that I've written throughout the years and played some for him. And then the ones that he liked, I developed them a little bit further, and I got some horn players involved and some other bass players. I'm not so great at bass, so I employed Stu Brooks actually to play some bass on the record. And it was fun putting people together in the name of helping a legend of reggae, rock and roll, punk music. Just helping him out. He's not in a great situation. It's, he's doing fine right now, but because of the, his mental health issues in the past, things turned out maybe not exactly how they should have as far as royalties. And getting his share of things, from the whole Bad Brains thing. So he's just out here still trying to do his thing. As a solo artist, as a roots reggae artist. He doesn't really want to have anything to do with the hardcore scene anymore. So we put together a roots reggae album that I think he's pleased with. I'm pretty pleased with. I can't wait for everybody to hear it.
Same. Like, I've heard some of the singles that have come out, and then the one he's done, you guys did together on the Pacifier single. Was that part of that process? Was that just a tune you had and like he added to it, or how'd the Easy come about?
Easy was the first track that we recorded together. And it's featuring Pacifier because, the Law Records, the label, really wanted to have at least one Pacifier feature on there, even though I'm playing on pretty much all the songs. Like, that's the one that I'm actually singing on. So we have the Pacifier tag on that. But the other guys in Passafire aren't necessarily involved in that recording. That's just, once again, something to try and bring more attention to the track by tagging Passafire instead of Ted Bowne, because my presence on Spotify and other streaming sites is not nearly as big.
Was it? Well, yeah, I think it's always the soloist. Paul McCartney is not going to pull more than the Beatles. You know what I mean?
Right, totally.
But
you're not always going to be able to throw the Beatles label on something. So
that's true.
You know, we don't throw the Passafire tag, primary artist tag, on everything that I feature on. But that one, we're all big fans. So
That's
it was
so sick.
Kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah. And it came out so good, man. It's such a good tune.
Well, thank you. There's 3 out and 7 more to come.
That's awesome. I'm so stoked. One thing I wanted to ask, so as far as learning production and songwriting, did you see both those skills kind of grow together?
Yeah. I mean, I guess you sort of fall into a routine of how you sort of lay out a session before you actually write note 1. And it's in my mind, you got to have some kind of intro, and then verse, chorus, bridge, maybe another verse, maybe another chorus. I don't know. That's just kind of the normal way of looking at it. But if you start with that and then realize, oh, this would sound better here, or maybe we don't need a chorus, or let's throw in a pre-chorus.
Yeah.
It comes, I guess, you could say it comes hand in hand with being at the controls and looking at the Pro Tools session and saying, oh man, this looks lopsided. There's too much going on at the end here. Let's, try to balance it out. It definitely has been something that I've done since college, is at least recording the demos and stuff. So it is a major part of writing songs. I don't very often sit down with a guitar and just write a song. It's usually go in the studio and make a drum beat, make a bass line, vibe on that for a little bit, and then go from there. I usually do start with some kind of rhythmic element just to lay down the feel of the track.
Yeah. Because I noticed with the most recent release, 16-beat, that compared to in seeing it grow throughout each album, it's each album you guys put out, more and more of that kind of production end of songwriting came into play, which should happen naturally for any band that's putting more time into it. But because on the most recent release, it's really tight. So I'm to have access to recording and to be thinking of that way, I'd imagine writing and kind of production's kind of hand in hand for someone like.
Yeah, a lot of these tracks are sort of hodgepodge recording sessions. Drums get recorded here at my house, and then for that one, I actually recorded the vocals in an Airbnb in Savannah on a day off.
Yeah.
So we just needed to get some work done, so we set up and recorded vocals there, and they ended up sounding decent enough. So we did that, and then Will went back to LA and added stuff in his studio. He actually added some guitar doubling towards the end with some crazy guitar that was on the wall at the Norva in Norfolk, Virginia.
Yeah.
There was a crazy, had all these switches that switched the effects within the guitar. So you could plug it in and kind of get some different fuzz tones, different there's some delay and stuff. So he just plugged that directly into his Focusrite in the green room, and went to town with it. So that, you know, the way that we record now is not like going in the studio for 3 weeks and laying everything down over that amount of time. It's getting into whatever space we can with our mobile rig or at home, recording some stems, sharing them online, and we'll mixing them.
Which is much like it's really like I think it really brings out different aspects of you guys' like sound, because like from one record to the next it really like builds up in a really cool, unique way, and like and like living so far apart, you know, it seems like a way easier process.
Well, it's become the way that we have to do it, and you know that we used to strive for more of a live sound, and Long Shot I think is the livest sound we've gotten, because we did a lot of the drum tracks. We did some of the bass and guitar and keys. We kept some of the original stuff that we played along with Nick. So there is a live aspect to it because it was live. Whereas now we know that our chances to get in that situation for a long enough time is pretty slim. So we just record when we can, share files when we can, and so that it has much more of a production heavy sound now, which I enjoy. It sounds more mature.
Right.
I recorded the first album, so listening to the self-titled album versus where we're at now, we've been to a bunch of studios in between, and now we're self-recording again, and to hear how far it's come, it's pleasing to hear the new sound that we're putting out.
And just like, well, that's like listening to yourself in any capacity. You're kind of going through that. Oh, I should have maybe hit that note different. Did I say the word but banana funny? You know what I mean? Like as a singer, you like at least that's what I do. Let me put that. I do that. I dive in. I'm like, I could have like, is that too Nate? Whatever. Like, and then
I said when I'm staring at each other in Kiss My Head.
Yeah.
And that was the one take that I said I'm staring. And that was the one that got kept. And I guess it slipped. I didn't catch it until it was out there.
Yeah.
And so when we mixed the vinyl version of the album, we had Paul Leary, who did the original mix, do the vinyl mix, and he switched out those words, and now it's when we're staring at each other how it should be.
But to hear that, you gotta get the vinyl cut, y'all.
Exactly. That's the truth.
But yeah, but it's those things. So, and then when you're on the next level of producing, mixing, and mastering, and doing all that end of it, you're thinking. Well, I don't know if you do the mastering, but like on all the other ends of it, like you're getting really into the weeds of like, I should have turned up the mids, or like.
Yeah, actually, with 16 beat. Speaking of that track, there was I put the song on in the van when we got the first master back, and usually I hear the master and I'm just like, yep, that's great.
Yeah.
But I heard it in my headphones and it sounded great, but then I heard it in the car stereo and there was some sub bass that didn't have really much mid-tone to it, and it just dropped out on the chorus. I didn't feel the heavy low end on the chorus, and I messaged the other guys, and I was just like, Mike was sitting there with me. He was like, yeah, I feel that too. So we messaged Will, and we're like, hey, maybe we're crazy, but what do you think? And Will was like, yeah, I'll go back and mess with it. So luckily we were in LA at the time. He was able to go back to his studio. I believe he re-recorded the bass with a different tone. And then, we got it mastered again. And when I heard it, the second master, I was like, yeah, all right, that's all the difference right there. But, I'm not, that's just one thing kind of recently that I've been able to catch before it goes to master. There's stuff from the past that when you're in the studio and your ears are kind of shot from being in the studio for 3 weeks and you're in the mixing phase, you're like, oh yeah, that sounds amazing. And then you hear it later and you're like, man, that's piercing.
Yeah.
But I couldn't hear that it was piercing because my ears were fatigued. So it's, you got to give yourself time to not hear music and then go back to it and listen to it and see if it still has that pizzazz or whatever it is that you liked about it.
I think that's wise words. And like, especially because a lot of people now have to do it all on their own. You're your own songwriter, marketer, all the things you're kind of doing. And like, it's easy to get caught up. Like I get caught up in performance bits because, so I may not hear the drum fill flub at all, but the drummer does. So it's important to get that extra ears, but also take that space. I think that's really well said.
You can get fixed on one part of a song, and one part is mixed in well enough to where you just don't hear it. But then you come back to it, you're like, wait a minute, why do we even have that there? Or, whatever can happen there. I
guess, okay, so one thing I wanted to kind of jump back to HR for a second. When he rolls in, does he roll in by himself? Is he rolling in with a crew? Is he like, how does like, when you present him with a track, is he kind of already fumbling into a melody, into a song? What's it look like with him?
He is either, sometimes I go pick him up. Sometimes his wife brings him. We have a mutual friend, Sean, who also will bring him out here to the studio. So he usually rolls up with just one other person. If Sean's here, he'll stay and hang out. Lori will usually go into Salisbury and go shopping or something. But it's usually just him and I for a couple hours together in the studio.
Oh my God, that's so cool. Like, what's it like picking up HR? Do you play music in the car? Is it silent? Is he just like...
Yeah. I've been told that he really likes Israel Vibration.
Yeah.
So I'll play some Israel Vibration or Burning Spear. He's just really into roots Rasta music. So that usually gets it going. And sometimes he'll ask if I have any new music, Passafire music, or new instrumentals to play for him. And I took him grocery shopping one time.
Yeah.
On the way home. Yeah.
How'd that go?
That was good. We got everything he needed. Yeah.
That's so sick.
Yeah. He's just a normal dude, man.
Yeah. Well, of course. It's you build up these people in your mind, for years and years of like observing their music. And someone like HR, who's like, mythos also follows his music, Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something, I told you I have 3 older brothers. They're 8 to 12 years older than me. So in the mid 80s, early 90s, they were listening to Bad Brains all the time. So I've known of HR as like my older brother's heroes growing up. So to have him here, and I actually had my oldest brother and my brother Ben, who's closest to me in age, here recording for a side project we have called The Printers.
Right. Quartet tones.
Yeah.
Great record.
And thank you. HR came over to hear the final mixes of the record, and my brothers got to sit with us and listen. My brother John was just on cloud 9.
Oh my God.
He's like, I can't believe this is happening right now.
That's so cool.
And HR was very cool with him. He was, took pictures and was very gracious.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Is it like when he's doing stuff like that, doing features, is it like a different, like, is he kind of lost at parts, or does he kind of jump in knowing? Because I remember emailing you about it and you telling me like how you kind of aided him in some direction with it, which made that part so cool. Yeah,
I sit with him, we listen to it together, if he doesn't have something already planned out, then we sit there and go through ideas. But it's kind of half and half with the features. He's been doing a lot of them.
Yeah,
and
that's awesome.
Like half the time he comes in with an idea that he's concocted already, and then the other half of the times we build something together based on, you know, whatever the song's about or whatever words we can take from the existing chorus of the song or verses of the song. Anyway, yeah, so H is just, you know, he's kind of a in the moment guy. A lot of the time we'll just let something play and he'll just either freestyle something or he'll open his Bible and read something and then sort of sing his interpretation of whatever he just read. Sometimes he sings exactly from the Bible, and sometimes he's just like, you know, off the cuff. And that some of the songs, the song we did with Charlie Tuna, that was I just played the beat and he was like, yeah, go press record, and he sang that chorus right away, and it was just off the top of his head. And I was like, what in the world? That was so perfect. Yeah, I just came up with that. Like, okay.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's so sick. Like,
which I know a lot of Bad Brain stuff was done like that too.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised, but it's just cool to see it happen.
It's, well, yeah, to be there. That's like, you read about like just one take Jakes, as they call them in the biz, you know, just whipping something together. And like, the more and more I write and record stuff, I'm like, I don't believe it, but it's got to exist in some bleak moments, you know? What if like,
it does. I mean, I think everyone that sings well enough has the opportunity to nail it in one take. Sometimes you don't need all 8 takes that you're doing for your comp. But that's kind of that. You know, that goes back to the question you asked earlier. I will do 8 takes just sort of religiously.
Yeah.
That's just my way of doing it. So even if I don't need to, I've got 8 different versions of each phrase of the song in case one I hear later on. I'm like, I don't like how I sang that. There's 7 other versions.
I think that's also a good rule of thumb too, because like, I don't feel good if I get it all in one take. I'm like, give me 5 more. It can't be good. It can't be good. You know what I mean? There's something about it that the years of trying to make it right. That's like, it can't just be one. Come on, let's do 9 more.
Yeah.
But also on the other end of that, it's like you're saying, to have more to pick and choose from, even if you just keep it or get rid of it all. It's better there than not.
Right. Totally.
I guess to kind of wrap up with HR, like I guess through working with him and I guess still working with him, what are some like lessons of like songwriting or performing or just like philosophies you've taken from being that close and working with him to your own practice that you see doing when he's not around?
I guess I've produced other artists before in a loose sense of the word, but I think this is kind of the first time that I've sat with an artist and written words and melodies and coached through, you know, specific parts of a song. And with HR, I've learned how to do that. I can't say that I've now learned how to do that with everyone because he's a very unique person.
Yeah.
But with him, like I've found we have great conversations when he starts opening up, and we can talk about some stuff, you know, usually like old tour stuff. I'll ask him, what was your favorite city you ever toured in? And then we have a 2-hour conversation about how awesome Amsterdam is. And, you know, we get off on tangents. And then once we're deep in the conversation, I'm like, hey, let's record something. And that's usually when the best stuff happens, is when we've kind of had this buffer zone of casual talking and feeling comfortable. and then getting started. Because sometimes he just comes in and he's like, all right, let's go. And we start, and everybody needs a warm up. So it's not always like the best right away, but I've learned over time that if we get into some conversation and, maybe have like some water, tea or whatever, and just get away from thinking about music for a couple minutes or half an hour or so, then the rest of the session is great. He usually brings me like muffins, or he makes blueberry wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a jack of all trades.
That's
so
amazing. Yeah.
We usually end up talking about how good the muffins are, or how he made the wine for a little while.
But I think that's like with someone like him, because like through interviews, he seems a bit reserved, and I think that has to do with like the health issues that he's working through. So that I think that to have just like a casual conversation, not being like worshipped as a legend, but as a guy trying to make something right now, and just not even talking about making something, but just as a person, I can see how that would loosen up the creative juices to let something happen, like to feel like you're just working with a friend. I think that's for someone like him or anybody, like super important to feel like you feel comfortable and you're on the team where someone's not trying to get clout or anything, but make the best thing with you. And as a producer, studio engineer, you're playing like this double role of an expert in a sonic field, but also as like a psychiatrist in a way, or like a counselor in a way.
Yeah, it's definitely a different experience working with someone with mental health issues, but he is usually, if he's not talkative right away, it's usually pretty easy to get into a conversation with him. I see these interviews and I see that he gets a little bit of, clammed up. And I think it's because a lot of these people are big fans. And so they ask all those questions. They don't ask necessarily the questions just like, what do you like to cook? Or do you cook food? And he does, and he's a great cook. And like, I feel like he just feels tired of the same old stuff. Sometimes, just as any musician would. I hate the question, who are your influences? Like, you asked sort of what we were listening to earlier. That's a different question. Yeah. But like, that's just such a like interview.
Yeah, well, it's a cliche. It's like, I haven't done research on you. Like, that's what that question tells me.
Yeah, and you were dropping names and things that, you said Cuca Lake in the beginning. So I'm like, oh, okay. This guy knows something about me.
Well, I've ever since I got the email back and put it together that we've been emailing before, I was like, oh shit!
Yeah,
like
I saw awesome. That. I looked up your name to try and see, when this was and all that, and I saw that we had done a project in the past.
Yeah,
so that's right.
And
no, it's not. But like what the difference is something that could potentially be on the radio versus something that'll just be an underground thing, because unfortunately everything on the radio is tuned,
right,
and everything on the radio is fit to a grid and to a click track. So if you're not keeping up with that and competing with that, then it's just gonna fall into the category of like, kind of unrefined underground style stuff. And I feel like he deserves to have the pro treatment on his vocals. He's had a lot of stuff in, the last 10, 15 years where I could tell that, and I don't know these people, so I don't mean to like, I'm not trying to down talk them, but they're people that were fans and they're like, I'll do it for free. Yeah. But then you get that quality. Yeah. And you get just a fan that is like, oh, I recorded HR. Yeah. Which, probably most of that time he's getting that like fan conversation and not comfortable. So I wanted to make it comfortable for him, and I wanted to make something that sounded professional and edited, and something that can compete with other things in the reggae and reggae rock genres currently.
Well, I definitely think you did and are doing that, because, like you said, there's so much people putting out music, and you're competing with Perfect. And if you're not there, you're not going to be like how you say, you're not going to be on the playlist. You're not going to make the radio cut, and just like you said too, it's not fan service, but it's like trying to make HR the best. It's like, and I'd imagine this is what you would do with anyone you would work with, trying to make your client the best, like, that they can be there and competitively out, which is going to make, which is night and day. Like, that makes you good at what you do like that, because you care about that. And like, it definitely comes off with your work with HR.
Well, thanks, man.
And with your own work, not to nerd out on the HR stuff, but man,
it's all right.
Is to kind of jump back into like the printers. Are you guys making another record, or was HR sitting in the initial to that first record that came out a while ago?
No, we are working on some new stuff. We have been for a little while now, and it's just kind of been a back burner thing.
Yeah.
And I hate putting it on the back burner because it's my family. So more recently, I dove back into those mixes, and I think we're really close to having another. It'll probably just be, I think it's like a 5 or 6 song EP, but we were able to get together here at the farm and record. So that was a different experience for us. Before, we were in a studio where it was daytime hours, and we had to go home and come back in the morning. But here it was just kind of however long we wanted to work. Yeah,
that's awesome. And are you engineering all of it? Because with the first one, you had someone else record it, right?
Yeah, somebody else engineered the tracking, but I engineered the mix.
Okay.
For the last one, and this one, I'm overseeing all the tracking and mixing engineering. And
when you're recording with your brothers and your dad, like, do you notice, like, I guess, like, through like the first recording session, and maybe during this most current one, do you notice weird things that they do with their playing and really kind of get the, like, oh, that's what you're doing, like, analyze it? Like, we've been playing that around the kitchen table forever, but now I see and hear it. You know what I mean? Are there tricks of the family trade that stick out?
There are things that my brothers do musically that I'm like, oh, yep, there's your lick. That's your style. But I mean, I think more the songwriting is really what catches me about my brothers, and the printers for me is mostly like, I want them to take their songs. I want to help them bring their songs to life.
Yeah.
I have my songs are with Passafire, and I have some songs with the printers, but I really enjoy my brothers playing and singing and songwriting. So it's a lot of fun to develop that with them and see their ideas come to life.
That's beautiful. And who better the help than like your family doing that?
Hell yeah.
That's so cool. Like, I have a couple cousins that play, and we tried to do the bit, but like, it's kind of, it's interesting, like, because like when they don't do it as like full time or as like in depthly, how like, I even though you can grow up around it, how one relative can really drive that thing forward, and then stepping back, you kind of like get a whole different perspective of playing with your family in a way.
Yeah.
And like how you're saying it, sometimes it's because you get to do your thing so much that now you become support. You're playing more rhythm so they can rip on a pentatonic for a little bit longer.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, my brother John plays guitar, and he's like kind of my inspiration originally for wanting to play guitar. And he is way more than just a pentatonic guy. Yeah. My brother Ben and I, we're the pentatonic guys, but he's way more into jazz phrasings and
Oh, that's sick. Yeah.
Jimmy licks, and just, he's kind of the inspiration for the other two of us brothers. He's the older one, so he introduced a lot of the original music that we all listened to when we were younger. So we all look up to him.
That's beautiful, man. Well, Ted, thank you so much for taking so much time and chatting with me. I'm really looking forward to our gig at the Grog Shop on the 19th.
Yeah, Grog Shop's coming up.
Yeah. So super stoked about that. Super honored to be able to clear the stage for you guys. And yeah, man. Is there anything like you want to plug before, like that maybe we haven't touched upon, or any of the other bits like show-wise coming up?
Well, tonight is Thursday. I don't know when this airs, but Friday is tomorrow. What is the date tomorrow?
The 22nd.
22nd. So the 22nd of September, we're releasing another song.
Okay, sick.
All of our social media is pointing towards where you can go listen to that, and it'll be out midnight tonight. So tomorrow, or in the past, whenever this is airing.
What is it? I'm going to probably put this out the week before or the Wednesday before. Or no, shit. Yeah, it'll be the week before the Grog gig, so we can use it as kind of promo towards that.
Cool. Well, then what I will say is go check out all of the singles that we've dropped in the last, several months. And I think at this point we're getting pretty close to our album release by the time we're playing the Grog Shop show. So look out for that.
Well, thanks so much, man. This has been a blast. I've really enjoyed getting to dig into your career and like how intertwined it is with your family. That's super inspiring, and just like knowing that we've worked together. Like this is so sick, man. Yeah. So thank you so much for your time.
Of course, man. Thanks for the interview.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig at the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.